Hi, this is Joe, KF7MIX, here with the 6th video in the JS8Spotter training series. This JS8Spotter is in a companion program for JS8Call. This video is going to be probably the last video in the series for right now. This video covers specifically forms, MCForms for JS8Spotter. I'll go ahead and give you a reminder of the scope of this video and the series, and we'll talk about the gaps that this feature in JS8Spotter is trying to fill. And then we'll just go ahead and dive deep into the multiple choice forms. All right, so just a reminder of the scope. These are training videos for JS8Spotter. These are not training videos for JS8Call. There are plenty of those videos out there, plenty of data out there for people that want to learn JS8Call. JS8Spotter it doesn't make JS8Call simpler. It fills gaps in JS8Call functionality. And one of those gaps is forms. There are no forms in JS8Call. The most obvious reason for that is that it is not necessarily geared towards emergency communications. And the other obvious reason is that JS8Call is a low-speed format, so it doesn't necessarily lend itself well to forms, which are usually quite large. MCForms stands for multiple choice forms, and it's kind of a compromise to give some sort of form functionality to a low-speed mode. So let's go ahead and, and the reason for the multiple choice, we'll cover that right now, is that open-ended forms need a lot of time to transmit in the low-speed mode. So with a multiple choice form, you can have up to, with the format that we're using, up to 37 different answers represented by one single character in your transmission. And then your form can have a few questions or a lot of questions. And you can, the actual question itself and the answers are not limited in length because the form format itself is stored on each side of the communication. So you can send a lot if you're creative, and we'll go over some of these forms and how they're organized. If you're creative, you can send a lot of information with very little data. We'll talk about all that here, but let's go ahead and jump into the forms. Let's talk about the file format first. So let's go here and open up a couple of these forms. So the file format is extremely simple. The first line has to be the first line, has the title of the form, the pipe symbol, and then the ID of the form. It's recommended that you follow kind of a convention. It's not real strong, but it's not enforced, but the convention is F exclamation followed by 3 characters, alphanumeric. So also kind of a convention is that the 100 series are general purpose forms and the 300 series are emergency response forms. But again, that's just a general sort of rule. It's not hard and fast. So let's look at this format. So anything that starts with a pound, actually any character other than a question mark or an @ symbol is going to be a comment. I recommend that your comments start with a pound and a space. So in our forms that we publish with the software, you're going to have the date that the form was updated and a description of the form. We'll talk about publishing a little bit later in this video. Okay, so this is form 100, and it is basically amateur operator information. And so whenever you have a question in the form, it starts with a question mark space. That's the file format. Okay, this file format is documented in the documentation. You can look at it. I'm just going to talk about it real quick. Oops. Okay, so you have question mark space. Anything after that is what will be asked or presented to the person filling out the form. So you notice this doesn't end with a question mark. It ends with a colon. So GMT offset, you're selecting your offset. Now everything after this question mark that has an @ symbol up to the next question mark, everything with an @ symbol is an answer. So you have @ symbol, a character, and a space. Okay, now I've gone in order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, A, B, C, all that. You don't have to go in order. I could put anything I want there. It could be @ symbol. It just has to be 0 to 9, A to Z. You can't have special characters there. So I could have put A as the first option and Z as the second option. No big deal. I don't think this form has any like that. Some of the forms do. You could, if you had a yes/no question, you could have @y and @n. This is just the character that will be transmitted as your response for this question. And then the text after the at character space, this is what will be presented in the multiple choice form. So you have GMT offset. I think this is pretty straightforward. Notice that we have a lot of options here. I mean, that's because every GMT offset is represented. And that's fine. You can have as many options as you want. None of this is transmitted over the air except for the one single character that they chose. Even the question, there is no question number. The questions are asked in order, and they're transmitted in order, and received in order, and decoded in order. All right, so next time it comes to a question mark, the next question is presented, and then the next options, and it goes on. I mean, very simple format, question mark, answer, and you go to the end. Okay, that's the format. Let's look at a more complicated one so you can just see what a more complicated one looks like. A situation report. This one does something a little bit interesting, and hopefully you've watched the previous video to this one, the 5th training video on expect, on the expect subsystem. If you have, this will make sense to you. If you haven't, I'd recommend going and watching that before finishing this video. But you see here, we have questions and answers. But in this case, they've got 7 options, and then option A. Who is reporting? Okay, it's the operator reporting on behalf of themselves from their QHT. Notice that you can get really detailed in your answers, and you can have a lot of answers. So that the power of multiple choice is that with one character you can convey a lot of information. You just have to break out your answers in a logical way, and sometimes you have to break your questions down into multiple questions. So in this case, though, who is reporting? Answer A says relay retrieve details with E question mark, and then it has a code here. Okay, it's up to the person filling out the form then to put in this expect statement with the text that will be sent. Again, watch the expect video if you don't know what the heck I'm talking about. But this basically, you're answering, hey, more information to this question is available with this command. That way you have, the power of a regular form is you can type whatever you want. Kind of the downside of a multiple choice form is that you can't. You're not limited. If I wouldn't recommend doing this with every question, but in this particular situation report, there are several of these, and that's okay. Now, the operator who's reporting, they may more frequently report number 1, and it may be less frequent that this is reported. That's just fine, but you do have some flexibility too in telling them where to go to get additional information. And then the person retrieving the information can get that or not, depending on how important it is to them for that particular piece of information. So you're offloading, rather than sending an entire form all at once, you're offloading some of that task and letting the recipient be the deciding factor in what they need to do to get more, and if they have more time and energy, etc., to receive more parts of that information. Okay, so again, all of this is the same questions and answers. You'll see several of these where the person filling out this form needs to go. If they choose D, then they got to go and fill that in the expect system. Here's a yes or no. I used 1 or 2. You could have just as easily modified this to be Y and N. Okay. The only thing is make sure if you modify a form, it needs to be the same on both sides. These are published forms. They come with JS8Spotter. They're published on kf7mix.com. If you modify a form, everybody that uses that form that you're communicating with needs the same copy of the form. That's something you would distribute not over the air. You distribute it over email or a website or whatever. If you make custom forms, as you can see from this format, it's very easy to make a custom form. If you make a custom form for your purpose, I would strongly recommend that you publish that format either on kf7mix.com by sending it to me. My details are on qrz.com. Send it to me and we'll publish it for you, or publish it on your own website or your group's website. The last thing you want is to have anyone feeling like you're trying to obscure the meaning of your messages. Publishing your forms is how you avoid that. And you can see here, you can get as detailed as you want. Sometimes it's anyway, you can go through these forms on your own, but there's 2 examples of forms. That's the form file format. Again, that's published in the help files as well. But really, if you want to understand the file format, just look at the included forms, make your own that match that format, and read the documentation. All right, so as far as publishing forms, we kind of just covered that. Like I mentioned, forms are published to kf7mix.com under the JS8Spotter tab. You'll find them there. It's pretty easy to find them. They're also technically published when you download the program. You receive a copy of all the forms. Nobody needs to wonder what all those characters mean. If anybody wants to know what they mean, it's publicly available. Nothing's encoded, nothing's encrypted, and nothing is obscured. It's all publicly available information. All right, so let's talk about the interface, how these forms actually work, the fun part. If you go into JS8Spotter and you go to the Tools menu, you're going to find two options for forms, forms and responses. Forms is automatically generated based on the text files you have in the forms subfolder. So these are the text files I have in that subfolder. I'm going to load up this amateur operator information real quick. Okay, and we were looking at that form just a minute ago, GMT offset. See, that's there. You see, it's also giving me the letter that is going to be used as the response. I'm just going to go ahead and fill this form out. I already did that in the example video, but I'll fill it out just to be complete here. License level. Here's operating radio. Comfort level voice. Digital. Homebrew. I'm just entering this F100 form is just if someone wanted to know about an operator. There you go. I store this on my station. If someone wants to know about me, this is the amount of information they can get with just a brief transmission. So and let me just go ahead and post that. Post it to the expect system. So it's posting the following form. This is the actual form right there that goes into expect. It's warning me that if I've already filled this out and saved it, this is going to override it. Okay, I'm going to hit no actually, and I'm going to add my name. We'll leave it out. Let's just go ahead and post it, and I'll show you how you can modify it another way. Okay, I'm going to hit yes. Now if you go to Tools, Expect, you see that form is posted. It's posted, and now again, if you don't understand what I'm talking about with expect, you got to watch video 5. Video 5 explains this in great depth, and we're not going to go to that depth here. Okay, so anyone can retrieve this form, and this string right here, 723353, all that represents my answers in order to the questions. This last part right here is a date code. If you want to look at the source code of the program, it's not that long. The source code isn't that long. And down toward the bottom, you'll find how to decode that manually if you're so inclined. It's just a kind of a poor man's encoding for dates that can be very short if you want it to be. But there's a problem right here. I want to have my name as well. With every form, after your responses right here, you can have a comment. So since this is amateur radio station information, I'm just putting my operator name right there so people can retrieve it. Also, I can change who's allowed to retrieve this form right here. But again, watch the expect video if you have any questions about that. Okay, so that's saved. So I can transmit just like you already know about the expect system. I could transmit that form right now. I highly recommend transmitting forms as a message. Then you have some backup as to how that is received. All right, but let's go back to here real quick. And if you wanted to change your answers, you could go and type them in manually, or you can hit this load posted expect form. Okay, that loads all your answers from the expect system. That way you can change whatever you need to or want to change. Let's say I'm more available around this time, and I can repost it, and it will change this for me. So you don't have to manually change anything. I'm going to change it one more time just for fun. Load it up. Let's put that there. Okay, there we go. And again, they're stored in the expect system for people to retrieve whenever they want, and you can manually transmit them whenever you want as well. All right, now once those are in the system, there's going to be some back and forth communication to get those forms transmitted. And forms that are transmitted and received are stored here in responses. So I have a few test ones that people have sent me. I've got the timestamp This is just the list view, but let's look at this one. This is a test one that was sent to me. I'm going to double click it, and when you double click it, it decodes that form into its full format. Okay, so this is the full report based on that form. It's taken the code that was sent over and the timestamp, and it's expanded it out. So I've got the from station, the form number, the to station, when they filed it, that's that date code. This is the approximate time that they filed it on their system, because that form could have been sitting there for a week or a month or a year. I don't know unless I look at the form. And then this is when I received it, when the actual transmission happened. And then the answers are broken out and the questions are listed out in a format that's human readable. Now I can copy this or save it or do whatever I want with it. Okay. If I want to export these all as just data, I can do that as well. And that would be useful for putting into a spreadsheet if you needed to transfer a lot of information to someone. So let's look. That's basically how you fill out a form, how you make a form format, how you transmit it, how you receive it, and how you then get the actual report from that form. All right. Expect integration, we pretty much covered that. If you understand the expect subsystem, then you understand what it means to have something stored in this screen, and you see these forms. The only thing that that really needs to be pointed out, if you ever modify these manually, this is the text to expect. So they're going to send E question mark and then this. And this is what it's responding with. You notice that this is replicated in here. Okay, that's because the response is what is going to be picked up into that responses screen. And in order for that to be picked up, it needs to know that it's looking at this form. So this is a necessary part of the response. You're querying this and you're responding this so that you get it back. Okay. Other parts of that could actually be left out, and the form would still work to a degree. If I truncated it right there, I would still have these first answers. I just wouldn't have any of the other information. Let me see if I have any that are like that in my test data. All of mine have a timestamp. All right, so that's it. And again, in the expect system, if you do send a form manually, I would recommend sending it as a message. So if you load up a form and you hit send and you want to send it to someone, definitely click send as a message. Then you'll be able to take advantage of JS8Call's built-in CRC checking and acknowledgement for that message, and you'll have a better chance of knowing that it got through properly. All right, let's see what else we need to cover. Need for coordination. Obviously, forms only work if both sides of the equation have the forms. You need to have matching forms. The dates are in the form files, or just make sure you have the latest from JS8Spotter from the build. Otherwise, you're more than welcome to make your own forms or customize the forms that are there for your group and for your needs. You could use a form for anything. It doesn't have to be emergency communications. It can be for anything. It just could even be for like a net control login. It could be for communicating information about yourself or about your station. So, social interactions, etc. JS8 Chess, I'm sure, could do something with forms if they really wanted to. Anyone who has an interest could use it, but you got to coordinate. This is not an iPad app, for example. This is a ham radio digital modes software. And if you know anything about that, then you know that there's a lot of work involved in digital modes. It doesn't matter what you're doing, there's going to be something involved in making it work and coordinating it between everybody. There's reasons for that, but it's irrelevant. You do need to coordinate. Luckily, some of the forms are built in, so if you just know how to retrieve them and how to store them, you're set, if you want to use the ones that are built in. Let's take a quick look at the database to finish up. It's not super complicated. Those are the database fields, and they pretty much match what you would expect. Okay, so these are the responses that are stored, and then As far as the actual forms themselves, they are in the text files, so they're not stored in the database. The only thing stored in the database are the responses that your station has received. So look to the forms subfolder in JS8Spotter, and you'll find the forms information there. If you have any questions about JS8Spotter or the MCForms of JS8Spotter, comments or contributions, just put them in the comments here on YouTube, or feel free to email me directly. My email information is on qrz.com. This is Joe, KF7MIX. Thanks.